The silence that followed Jake's question was so complete that Glix could hear his own circulatory fluids rushing through his auditory chambers. 23 pairs of eyes, eye stalks, and optical sensors stared at the human in absolute horror. Mr. Martinez, Glix wheezed, did you just ask if you could pet a creature that has a 97% kill rate against trained xenobiologists? Well, yeah, Jake replied cheerfully, still gazing at the Death-Stalker with something disturbingly close to affection. I mean, look at those scales. They're beautiful. And the way it moves is so graceful. Plus, it seems curious about us, not aggressive. The Death-Stalker, as if summoned by Jake's words, glided closer to the observation window. Its massive form moved with liquid precision, muscles rippling beneath those supposedly beautiful scales. Each step it took made the reinforced floor plates groan under its weight. Curious? Mora squeaked from behind her breathing mask. That thing is calculating which of us would make the best appetizer. No, Jake said, pressing both hands against the barrier now. See how its head is tilted? That's curiosity. And look at its pupils, they're dilated but not in a predatory way. More like confused interest. The Death-Stalker stopped directly in front of Jake, separated only by 3 layers of neutronium-reinforced transparent aluminum. The creature's massive head lowered until it was at eye level with the human, and those terrible yellow orbs studied Jake with what could almost be described as fascination. Mr. Martinez, Glix said slowly, step away from the barrier. Immediately. But Professor, it's trying to communicate. Jake's excitement was reaching dangerous levels. Watch this. Before anyone could stop him, Jake placed his palm flat against the barrier. The Death-Stalker's eyes fixed on the small human hand, then, incredibly, it raised one of its own claws and pressed it against the barrier directly opposite Jake's palm. The claw was easily 5 times the size of Jake's entire hand. Several students fainted. Kep and Zepp started praying to their ancestral spirits. Mora activated her emergency beacon. This is unprecedented, Glix muttered, his scientific curiosity warring with his survival instincts. In 300 years of recorded observations, no Death-Stalker has ever displayed non-aggressive behavior toward another species. That's because nobody ever tried being friendly to one, Jake said matter-of-factly. Look, it's responding to me. This is incredible. We could be witnessing the first interspecies communication with a Vorkanian Death-Stalker in galactic history. The creature's massive head moved closer to the barrier, and it made a sound. Not a growl this time, but something softer. Almost questioning? Did it just purr? Jake asked, his face lighting up with pure joy. Death-Stalkers do not purr. Glix protested. They roar, they hiss, they make sounds that can liquefy internal organs from 50 meters away. They do not purr. But the sound came again, deeper and more resonant, and it definitely sounded like the galaxy's most terrifying version of a purr. Jake grinned and made a similar sound back, though his human vocal cords could only produce a pale imitation. The Death-Stalker's eyes widened, and its tail began to move in what could generously be described as a wag. Oh, this is not happening, Glix moaned. This cannot be happening. I do not get paid enough for this level of psychological trauma. Professor, Jake said, turning to face the class without moving his hand from the barrier, I think we've been approaching these creatures all wrong. They're not mindless killers. They're intelligent, social beings who've been treated as monsters for so long that they've started acting like it. The Death-Stalker, apparently deciding that Jake was the most interesting thing it had encountered in decades, settled into a sphinx-like position directly in front of the barrier. Its massive head rested on its front paws, and it continued to watch Jake with those enormous, ancient eyes. Social beings? Mora whispered. Those things have wiped out entire research stations. Because they felt threatened, Jake explained patiently. Think about it. Every time humans or other species encounter them, what's the first thing we do? We either run away screaming or start shooting. How would you react if every stranger you met either fled in terror or tried to kill you? The logic was sound, Glix realized with growing horror. Terrifyingly, impossibly sound. So what you're suggesting, Glix said slowly, is that the most feared predator in 3 star systems has been misunderstood? Exactly. Jake beamed. And I think our friend here would very much like to prove that theory correct. Wouldn't you, gorgeous? The Death-Stalker made that purring sound again, louder this time, and its tail wagging increased in tempo. This is either the greatest breakthrough in xenobiological history, Glix muttered, or the most elaborate suicide attempt I've ever witnessed. Only one way to find out, Jake said, his hand still pressed against the barrier. Professor, what do you say? Want to make history? 22 students immediately began shouting variations of absolutely not, have you lost your mind, and I'm transferring to accounting. But Glix found himself staring at the Death-Stalker, at the way it watched Jake with obvious intelligence and what could only be described as hope. The safety protocols alone would take months to approve, Glix said weakly. Or, Jake suggested with that dangerous human grin, we could just see what happens when I offer it a snack. I brought some of those protein bars from the commissary. The Death-Stalker's head lifted slightly, and its nostrils flared as if it could smell the food through the barrier. Mr. Martinez, Glix said, feeling his academic career flashing before his eye stalks, you are either the bravest being I've ever met, or the most suicidally optimistic. Why not both? Jake laughed, reaching into his pack for the protein bars. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? The Death-Stalker's tail wagged harder, and Professor Glix realized that he was about to find out exactly what happened when an unstoppable human met an supposedly immovable predator, and despite every instinct screaming at him to run, he had to admit he was curious to see the results. After all, this was either going to be the discovery of the century, or the most spectacular educational disaster in galactic history. Knowing humans, it would probably be both.